Each year, the city of Hillsboro invests millions of dollars in investments for infrastructure and large projects and city facilities. So who does the city hire to work on these projects? And when it leads to economic opportunities and the ability to hire people, how do we make sure that those opportunities are shared with all? Which businesses get selected? And, that is part of the mission of the Hillsboro's Supplier Diversity Program, to ensure that historically marginalized communities and businesses are included in and participating in these economic opportunities. I'm Hillsboro Mayor Steve Callaway, and thank you for joining us for this month's edition of Community Conversations, where we'll be talking about Hillsboro's Supplier Diversity Program and how it creates economic opportunities that historically may not have been accessible to all. And joining us today for the conversations are Danny Morato, the Supplier Diversity Program Administrator for the City of Hillsboro, Diana Delgado, part owner of CE Engineers, and Paris Wahlstrom, co-owner of Beyond Uniforms and Apparel. Thank you all for being here with me today. And I want to start off by asking the question, how important is it for businesses to get opportunities to work with local governments like the City of Hillsboro? And Paris, we'll start with you.
The most important part is that working with cities is like residual income. Your companies aren't going to close. You're always going to have them need different things, whether it's engineering or uniforms. Mm-hmm. A perfect example is during COVID-19, a lot of businesses shut down, and for us, it was a good opportunity because we had contracts. We were selling to cities and counties that still needed their employees to be working. They needed some stuff like laptops or laptop cases for the new work at home model that came out. Mm-hmm. So that's helped a lot.
Very good. Diana.
It's also nice to work locally too. We do have clients that are private clients, and sometimes that takes us out of state, which is really taxing. But working for local governments, we can stay, where we live and do projects for the city where we live. And so that's really cool too. Good.
Danny, anything to add?
Yeah, I think they nailed that answer. But if I were to add anything to this question, it would just be, I feel like there is a lot of sense and pride in being a community member and also being a business owner, and also contributing to economic development, right? And keeping that money close to home, like Diana was saying. It's nice to just be able to work where you live.
Mm-hmm. So, and you also are a business owner as well.
Correct.
And so you kind of see it from both sides, from the city as well as the business side. So, what is the biggest hurdle or barrier for businesses, to engage with city governments?
Sure. I think two of them come to mind right away. The first one is finding a point of contact. Like, who do I connect with? I've been to several networking events where folks are like, "Hey, Danny, I want to do business with the City of Hillsboro. Do I call Mayor Callaway?" And obviously the answer is yes, right? But you have a better shot of getting in touch with somebody like me so that I can point you into the right direction or connect you with the right department, with a point of contact, right? So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is the complexity of the procurement process. And that's not unique to the City of Hillsboro. I think all public agencies have very involved procurement processes. And I think that I speak for our department when I say that it is our entire goal to humanize that process so that it doesn't feel so transactional. At the City of Hillsboro, we're really community-centered, and we really want to show up as our authentic selves. Because at the end of the day, it's Diana and me doing business, right? Mm-hmm. I'm City of Hillsboro and she's CE Engineer, so there's that piece.
And what barriers have you experienced as you've tried to, build opportunities or have access to local governments?
Mm-hmm. I think that the biggest thing is where to start. Mm-hmm. With especially cities. Do you start with the purchasing department? Are they purchasing for the whole city? Or does every department do their own purchasing? And if that's the case, who do you ask? Who do you call? Who do you email? I think a lot of smaller businesses may not think to look at the websites of, different companies or different cities. And so I think that the program would be helpful as, being able to say, hey, I want to do this. This is what I sell, or this is what I do. Where should I start?
One of the barriers that we faced is being just a very small engineering firm. So we have 3 engineers and a drafter and an office manager. And so it's hard for us to compete for RFQs with large engineering companies because they have so much more resources. And so recently there was an on-call for engineering firms. And, through Danny, he was encouraged the department to also include small businesses in their choosing their selection process. And so we were able to be part of that on-call, whereas I think otherwise we would not be able to compete.
Nice. Well, and I remember somebody telling me from a construction side, that at one point, all construction companies start off with 2 shovels and a pickup, and then they grow from there. But the challenge, he said, that I face is that I work all day and then at night have to come back and do the estimating and the bids and the RFPs, RFQs, all of those. And he said, a large construction company, they have people who are working all day in the field, but they also at the same time have people who are working on bids and estimates all day in the office. And so that, and he said, and that makes it hard to compete. So, all of those barriers then, kind of lead us, Danny, to the Hillsboro Supplier Diversity Program. And, so tell us more about it and how and why the program started.
Sure. Well, I think both questions sort of paved the way for this next response, but I'm going to answer your question backwards, Mayor, so my apologies there. But I want to elaborate more on the why, because I think it's important. Then I'll talk about more about the mechanics of it. So one of the reasons why I started working at the City of Hillsboro is because the City of Hillsboro recognizes the systemic barriers and discrimination that has occurred throughout the U.S. In terms of race and gender. And in 2021, I know that the City Council really made it a priority to advance racial equity. And that's when the Supplier Diversity Program was identified as a key tool to advance equity in contracting. So that's really the why. Now, if we talk about the how, which is more of like the mechanics, how do the gears work inside the organization? I'd boil it down to maybe 5 things, which is, I'm gonna move fast, okay, I promise. The first one is the procurement policy. All departments are to create an annual plan where they showcase what they're gonna do to diversify their supplier base.
Okay, and how many departments in the city?
Good question, 12.
Good, and that includes things like fire, library, parks, police.
Correct, et cetera, finance, city manager's office, et cetera. And the second piece is the software. So we really want to get an idea of where we're at and where we want to be. So we track subcontractor utilization on large capital projects. And then the third component would be the internal community of practice. And in that community of practice, there are representatives from all departments. We huddle together. We talk about best practices. We celebrate wins. We also work out challenges. But more than anything, I think it's a nice place for us to collaborate and come up with creative ideas to incorporate small businesses and minority women-owned businesses. And then the fourth component is how do we face the external business community? And that we do that through outreach and networking. We have the West Side Open House, small business open house that we co-sponsor with Washington County. Talk more about that later in the conversation. And then there's the fifth and newest component, which is the creation of the Minority, Women, and Veteran-Owned Business Directory that's specific to Washington County.
Nice. Well, so then in your experiences as business owners, how familiar are you with programs like the Supplier Diversity Program, kind of throughout the area? And maybe what makes Hillsboro's a little different?
For me, or for us, we had not ever heard of this program before. So getting the word out in different maybe ways, because especially the little guy or girl is not gonna maybe get that information. If they're not gonna maybe know to go to the website or think to go to the website, or even know that some government will just not specialize, but are working, focused on things like women-owned and minority-owned and veteran-owned companies. So that's super important. And
yeah, we've had experience working with a program like this through the city of Portland, and that's been really beneficial for us because we would not have been able to get the smaller engineering projects because a lot of times the departments, they tend to work with larger firms. Even though they have small projects for that could go to smaller firms, they're just used to going to the larger firms because that's who they're used to working with. And so programs like this introduces our businesses to them, and they know we exist and that they can provide us these smaller projects. And it's definitely helped our business revenue throughout the years.
Good. And yes.
Oh, sorry. I also think that part of it is like for instance, with City of Hillsboro's program, they came out with their bid, and it wasn't just about price. A lot of the cities and county governments, that's all they care about. And so they might be going somewhere, overseas or a big investment firm. And with you guys, it's local. It's who can we have that maybe is minority or women owned. And it's nice because then you're there, you have, the ability to service them in a timely fashion and talk with them about their needs.
And so then what do you hope that the supplier diversity program does, for your business? And in some ways I think about a little bit of stability, because I know there's ebbs and flows in the private sector. And sometimes, those balance out between, government and private sector, so that when one is going down, the other may be a little bit more stable.
Yeah, I think that's my goal with working with local governments is definitely stability. We can plan for how many projects we have throughout the year, because once you get a contract with the city, it's set. And you know that project is going to last either 6 months to a year for the projects that we do. And so I can forecast that better. So if we have employees, which we do, it's nice to be able to have that security.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. We have 9 employees now, and started out with just the 2 of them. And knowing that we have a contract for 3 years, 5 years means that we can for sure keep this and keep building our employee base. So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I wanted to add that it also does give you a sense of pride being able to work on projects for the city. So we've done, work on different pump stations throughout the area, and it's just nice to know that we were part of that.
Yeah, and the local pride is important, as is when we spend locally, when we support local businesses, that money stays local. So as opposed to going overseas or something that's out of state, and and in doing so, I think we tend to support each other. And it's a point of pride, for city government too, to be able to support our local and small businesses.
Yeah, definitely. And when you're supporting local businesses and they can have more employees, those employees are spending their money locally also,
Yeah.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Danny, then how's the program impacted the selection of contractors?
Yes, great question. I would say advocacy. Advocacy is huge within department from department. I like to think that we had a little bit of a role in when with Beyond Uniforms. We had our chief of police and our chief of fire talk, who are you using? So that kind of sparked a little engagement there. And now I think Beyond Uniforms is the sole provider of those departments' uniforms. So that's cool. In terms of I always like to relate back to the policy because having a policy in place is very powerful because you can always refer back to it, right? I think it's human nature for us to always go to what's safe. I know what that company can do. I know that they're going to be quick. I'm familiar with the outcome. However, when you have a policy like ours in place, you can challenge that business as usual, right? Hey, let's give them a shot when it makes sense. And I think that is one of the main pieces. I would also say when we do a request for purchase and we're evaluating the criteria, the diversity, equity, and inclusion portion does have some significant weight as to who we select. And finally, I would say we are really, like my team specifically, is diligently working in creating more FaceTime opportunities, whether that's a Microsoft Teams call that people can log in or call into and get, listen to a company talk about their capabilities, their structure, where they're located, or a meet and greet in person.
So talk a little bit more about those, because where does a business owner start? So as we have folks who watch or listen to this,
Totally.
Where do they start? And you mentioned networking, you mentioned directory. Share more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, first of all, I'm going to funnel you to the City of Hillsboro website, because we have a dedicated supplier diversity program webpage. And there you can learn a little more about the program. And we also have some marketing materials that are available where we actually list what we purchase as a city, whether it's goods and services. So I think that's a really good starting point. And if you're debating, right, like, gosh, should I reach out to somebody at the city? I would say, please do. I'm really responsive. You can email me. You can call the front desk and ask for Danny Morato. If you're in town, come to the Civic Center and please just come and reach out to me. I would say the worst case thing is you and I get to communicate. I learn about your business and I plug you in to whatever network. I'm like the ultimate extrovert. So
nice, good. And then, there's a directory with women, minority, veteran, BIPOC-owned businesses.
Sure.
And share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I feel like that's a public agency-wide struggle is I think everybody has really good intentions, right? But then how do you manifest those intentions? And the way we decided to do it was to create a directory that was specific to Washington County. And that's the criteria: is the business owner must reside in Washington County, or the owner the business must be headquartered in Washington County. There is a really brief vendor registration. If it takes you more than 5 minutes, give me a call. It shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. But that really is a directory. It's totally optional. So there's no money involved. You're not required to do it if you're a business in Hillsboro, but it's just a way for us as city staff to be able to look to that directory first before we go into the greater market. So the intention is just to funnel, right? And sort of provide some guidance. Go here first. Go with Hillsboro first.
Good. And Diana, you mentioned networking. That's where you met Danny.
Yeah.
And so tell us, how did you learn about the networking event? Where was it located and how did that work for you?
Yeah, so I met Danny at a networking event through the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs. And so he introduced himself as City of Hillsboro rep. And I think this was still during when we had online meetings due to COVID. And so I think he just directly messaged me and was like, hi, I'm Danny. I'm starting off this supplier diversity program. Do you want to talk about your business? And I was like, sure. So he took the time to talk to me. I think it was like a 30-minute meeting. He really delved deep into my business and what we did. And he signed me up for the supplier list. And it's been great since. When the on-call contract for professionals for engineering services came out, he contacted me directly about it. Like, hey, you should apply for this. So it was very beneficial.
And then, Paris, as you begin to do more and more, for our city, then that helps, I guess, your resume, if you will, as a company, because now you've shown and proven that you're able to provide, for the needs of a large city. Therefore, you can do it for other organizations and other governments as well.
Yeah, and that actually is something that other governments, cities, counties, TriMet, those sorts of government,
Regional governments.
yeah, exactly. But they'll piggyback. So, they'll hear from someone in the city of Hillsboro, oh, we've got this great company. And instead of going through the whole bid process, maybe they'll just say, oh, hey, can we piggyback on that contract? And so that's happened a couple of times.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so what's ahead? I mean, we started about 3 years ago.
Well, I was hired 2021, and I would say the program was born January 2022.
Okay.
So a couple of years, this is the third year.
So I would say we're off to a good start.
I would say so too, man.
So, but we're not where we're going to be. So what's next? And how can we continue to help, our small businesses, minority, veteran-owned, women-owned businesses?
Yeah, so I would say, first and foremost, I said I was going to talk about the West Side Small Business Open House. And that's something that's really exciting for this side of town, right? I feel like a lot of the focus usually is in the Portland metropolitan area. And, there's a lot of exciting development going on in Hillsboro, Beaverton. On this side, we call it the West Side because I-5 is our landmark, so the west side of I-5. And we're collaborating with Washington County. And actually this year is going to be really cool. We're incorporating PCC and a workforce component to this. I would call it like a vendor trade show with program planning for whatever it is that you want to learn about. And we're also incorporating Metro. So all 4 agencies are going to sit down and we're going to talk about how we want to provide these resources for the attendees. So that's number 1. Number 2, like I mentioned before, we want to create these opportunities for firms to get valuable face time, whether that be a meet and greet, a more intimate setting so that you can shake hands, put a name to the face rather than just a name. And also short, brief presentations online so they can get exposure. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. And people can reach out to you at purchasing@hillsboro-oregon.gov.
That is 100% correct. Or you can go to the Supplier Diversity webpage, email me directly, come to the Civic Center, give us a call.
So for that, just go to the City of Hillsboro's website and you can just type in diversity supplier.
Yep.
And we'll get you that way.
That is correct.
Very good. How else can Hillsboro support your businesses in this way or other businesses that are looking, to get contracts with local government?
I think the program is just a great start. And like Danny said, that networking and outreach component, because that's really how you meet the people that you need to do business with. So yeah, just keep up the good work.
Good.
Will do.
Yeah, and finding different ways to get the word out there. That's super important because not everybody has a computer or not everybody has access to like the city magazine that they send out, that sort of thing. So finding a way to get it out there more.
And Paris, what is the website for your company?
We're beyondoregon.com.
Beyondoregon.com.
Yep.
Perfect. And Diana, what about yours?
It's ce-engrs.com.
All right, ce-engrs.com.
Yeah.
Good. And so anybody who's listening that wants more information about your companies can access it that way. Information about the Supplier Diversity Program can do it through the City of Hillsboro's website. And thank you, for your work. Thank you for supporting, our government, our community. Thank you for giving opportunities. This is an example of government really working well to make sure that everybody has opportunities and equal access. So thank you all for being here today. And thanks for joining us as well. We are so glad that you were part of our community conversation today, and we look forward to our next conversation with you.